Good morning. My talk today is called Marooned in the Culture, and it's basically a story of a person, perhaps a people, who do not know who they are. You know, our Maori people here in New Zealand derisively cry to the European, "You do not know your whakapapa, your origins, your family background, your genealogy. You do not know where you come from." So this is a short movie, I hope it's not too long, about where I'm coming from. It's a standard Kiwi question, and for an artist having some small claim on the public attention, one needs to know where this person is coming from, in a literal sense or a metaphorical sense. Where am I coming from? Well, in the long reaches of time, I suppose one slight or gentle claim I could make on genealogy would be that the people of Ireland, my name being Phillip O'Sullivans, were from the Forbergs and later on the Milesians, but in between, the most prominent group arriving in Ireland and the Irish land were the Tuatha De Danann, the tribe of Dan, and they arrived with Jeremiah and other patriarchs. And there are many Hebrew words in the Gaelic tongue today, and from the traditional ancient Gaelic. And Ireland is in the Ptolemy's map clearly outlined, the capital of Ireland, Tara, and some of the names are quite Hebraic. And this fits in with the time in Israel with the departure and the Babylonian capture and the invasion of and the scattering of the 10 northern tribes of Israel. Israel was then divided into the 10 tribes and two tribes down the south, the tribes of Judea. And so the Jews are Judea, not Israel. There's 2 nations, and Israel travelled in the ships of the Danites because they have a sea coast portion of Israel, and they were fishermen and sailors and traders. They traded in Europe, and they had good knowledge of Europe, and when the need came to escape from Israel, they travelled in these ships as far away from the troubles and wherever they could find vacant or relatively vacant lands to settle in. And they travelled up the rivers of Europe, the Danube, Denmark, the Dnieper, the Don, and London or London, and other such names like this show the early origins of the Dane, the tribe of Dan, the Danites settling in Europe. So it's in my name is O'Sullivan, so I take this to mean O son of Dan, and so it's a recovery of this early origin. Now, more immediately, or more modern times, on my father's side, there were many priests in on my father's side, the Joseph O'Sullivan side of the family, and on my mother's side, her name is Austin and Woodley, and her uncles were professors at the agricultural college just up the road from, well, in the town she was born, in W-Y-E-Y village, but there's a college because Canterbury is just up the road, and the agricultural branch of Canterbury was at Y, and her own immediate mother was a breeze washer, so I think she was maybe a laundry woman, a washerwoman, if you like. My mother lived in London during the Blitz as a young woman. Her sister had been very sick, and she died quite young, about the age of 20 or something. So she lived all through the Blitz, and it was in a holiday or a break away from London during the Blitz that she met my father. And she travelled to New Zealand as a war bride on a ship full of women. They did not travel with their husbands, so she has many friends from that time, and she's still alive today, living in Tauranga. Now, my father died many years ago, and he was born in a town that no longer exists. It was between National Park, I think, and Tamaranui, and it was a mill town with a hotel and a post office and a doctor and houses and shops and everything. You know, it was a fully developed small town, and there's not a trace of it left. And it passed with the passing of the Rimu timber in that part of the country. You know, the Rao Rimu spiral is in that area. And he had three brothers, and their big smoke was Hamilton, and he cycled as a young man from Mananui, where they were living just on the opposite side of the river from Tamaranui, and cycled all the way to Hamilton on gravel roads. It was gravel roads all the way from Tamaranui and he had this bicycle in our shed with really big balloon tyres on it. It was the only way you could really do long distance cycling over gravel roads with these big balloon tyres. And while he was away at the war, he received news that his father, my grandfather, had been shot, had been murdered by a farmhand back in Mananui, he had a small holding, a mixed farm, which was an economic unit in those days, just 10 acres, with pigs and a cow and sheep and vegetables and all that grown on the land. And a man could support himself and his family, especially with his sons up the road at the mill. He had no daughters. So this was most unusual in that time in New Zealand. There were only about 5 or 6 murders a year in those days, and there were about 2 or 3 million people living in New Zealand. So things were fairly quiet, but that was big news for a month or so, as you can imagine. So my grandfather was never spoken of, and I had a curious sense from this that I had a mother and father, and they had a mother and father, and it was just like 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, kind of very limited family ladder, really, a rope of people of our own. This was my idea, in my child's mind of our family, because if it was spoken of, my mother said that it was only suitable for me to hear this when of all ages I was 28. So she waited until I was 28 before she told me. I think I'd heard a little while before that from my sister or somebody. But this was a sign to me of how, and there are other indications of how my family thought I was very, perhaps a bit too sensitive. So it's quite suitable in many ways that I am, as I am, an artist. But this sensitivity, we shall see later how that came about. On the day that I was born, my pregnant mother fell over in the road. That's not a cause of any concern to any of us. It's just a thing. But the person I was to spend a great deal of time with later on as a young man, unbeknownst to us, because in the meantime I was when they came back and got together after the war, they lived in Palmerston North, and in a transit camp. And I think I was conceived in that transit camp, and they probably were given a house. The transit camp was not far away from the house that we were subsequently given in Palmerston North. And there's a map of a long road we have, and our road sort of came in and kind of kinked in like that, and the little joining road was very short. Well, from your point of view it's round the other way, of course, but I'll do it for myself as if it's for myself. And I think on that short stretch linking road, I don't think there was actually an address, but there were sort of two houses, each with an address on the main road, either side. So there were 2 houses, and then there was a house opposite the street, and then next house would be our house, and then I don't think the house of the person I was to meet later was not on the corner house, but the one, I think, one next to it. So there were only 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, we were the 5th house. There was sort of only 3 houses intervening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4. So there's 3 houses intervening between her house and my house. And she was a little older as a child there, and she was abused by her father. She was a little too familiar with such things, and had an inordinate curiosity, and I think she knew more than she ought to. Well, anyway, the same thing happened to me later, because when we moved away to Hamilton, and I was travelling down to Canterbury to go to art school, and on 1 year coming back, I met this person on the rail ferry, and we went to a house in Wellington here, and she did the same thing again. I guess I've always belonged since the age of 3 or 4. And it was a long time thing. We never wanted to look at that map. Palmerston North was sort of a no-go area, and because I think it began to dawn on her, and certainly much later on me, what had happened. And in fact, it was by the age of 50 that the thing that, also happens to boys and to men, I finally accepted that is what had happened. And from that age,